We have Mike Tomlin's press conference leading up to our game versus the Chargers. Try to do this as quick as I can because it's getting late.
Good afternoon. As always, I'll start with a quick assessment of our last performance. I really have the same reaction that I had after the game. I thought a major catalyst over all
Curiosity.
the three phases of the game that was significant was our ability to
24
minimize
minutes. Okay.
their outstanding running back, Taylor. Their offensive unit certainly had been on fire. They had punted, I think, 16 times in 8 ball games.
Wow.
Their success is well documented, but it all, from our perspective, stemmed from their ability to run the ball, to stay on schedule, to minimize one-dimensional passing circumstances. It allowed them to stay one step ahead of the defensive units, usually. It allowed them to minimize the potential of negativity in doing so. They protected the ball. I think they'd only turned the ball over 4 times on the season. And so a major component of the game for us was altering that, making them absorb some more risk, having them be in more one-dimensional passing circumstances, hopefully forcing them to punt a little bit more. All of those things stem from our ability to minimize the run game, and so just wanted to restate that. I thought largely we played complementary football as well. Once we started taking the ball away, the offense started scoring. I think we put on 2 quick touchdowns in the first half off of turnovers. It didn't always start that way. I thought that our inability to score when we got that turnover in the special teams game was a significant early component of the game, and from a negative perspective. And so, complementary football is big. Stopping the run is big. The takeaway game obviously is always big. These are core values, man, that we hold and certainly work toward. And we saw the fruit of that labor in stadium in terms of how the game unfolded. From a health standpoint, we had a number of things going on with people. Don't have a lot of significant updates. I'm certain that I will get more clarity as we push forward through the week. Scotty Miller is out with his finger. We'll see how he's able to function at some point this week with that. Cole Holcomb is still out with his illness. We'll keep an eye on him and see what his level of participation is. Isaac Siamalo is still nursing a pec like he was managing at the early portions of last week, and he was able to function for us. Pep's got a soft tissue injury. Chuck Clark is sick. He should be returning to us. And then we have some other bumps and bruises associated with play that may limit some people at the beginning of the week, but not prevent them from practicing and participating as we push forward through the week. As we always do, one man's misfortune is another man's opportunity. We'll take it as an opportunity to grow and develop some others and ready ourselves in that way. Certainly excited about a complete week's work with Kyle Duggar. Was really impressed by his work in stadium. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that again. Really impressed by his work in stadium. Excited about having a complete week of work with him at the safety position, not only in terms of knowing what to do. Certainly he displayed an ability to learn quickly and play and detail that component of it, but the communication component of it, the work within groups. I thought Jalen Ramsey did an awesome job with him, particularly as we got into the weekend last week, making sure that they were coordinated as safeties. But all that work didn't mean anything. We still had to get in the stadium and make it happen. It certainly was a challenge. It lacked a little bit of fluidity there early on, but I thought as those two worked together, their experience in the National Football League, even though they're somewhat new to us, and whether it's Jalen new to the safety position, I thought their global overall experience and talent showed up as the game wore on. So excited about an additional week's work with that collective. Jalen will continue to work exclusively at safety. We value his play, his positional flexibility. It's an asset to us. It gives a lot of people things to work on, but certainly under the circumstances that we're under right now, we deem that appropriate as we did last week in terms of nailing him down there. And so it'll provide opportunities for guys like Brandon Echols to step up, which he did, and play more snaps as a nickel, et cetera. And even guys like James Pierre had an opportunity to get some snaps outside. We've got more depth at corner than we do at safety. And so we're just simply pivoting and doing what's required to keep the train rolling. Now I'll start on the Los Angeles Chargers. I'll start first on their defensive side. Got a lot of respect for Jesse Minter, man, and his strategic approach to the game on that side. He does an awesome job of minimizing big plays. He does an awesome job of moving Derwin James around. Derwin is he's the straw that stirs the drink for them. He plays safety and base. He's capable of playing rundown nickel. He's also capable of playing linebacker in passing circumstances. Minter does an awesome job of showing all of his talents in those ways. He's a good blitzer. He's a good tackler. His disguises are great. I think they do a nice job with veterans in the secondary like Jefferson and Dante Jackson and others who also have to be versatile as he moves around. And I think oftentimes we don't talk enough about that. If one person is moving around, it generally creates challenges for others, and they seem to manage all of that really, really well. At the linebacker spot, they got a nice blend of older and younger. Perryman mixed up with Henley, man, is a nice tandem. Perryman's got really good instincts and experience. He's a good rundown tackler. Henley is a challenge. He's a good athlete. He's a sideline tackler, former safety. I think you see that in his game in terms of his ability to cover grass and do some of the things that could be challenging to other linebackers. He's also a really good blitzer. That's a component of his game that looks elevated in 2025 relative to 2024. But it's a reasonable expectation to see a young, talented player evolve and evolve in certain areas of his game. And certainly his blitz game is much more impactful watching this year's tape than when we were getting ready to play him a year ago. Their edge group is the group. They've got talent and depth in that group. They play as many as 4 and 5 guys along the edge. It's really impressive considering that, Bosa is no longer a member of that group yet and is still their deepest and most talented position probably on either side of the ball. We got a lot of people to get ready for there. Khalil Mack, certainly, former Defensive Player of the Year, is one worth mentioning. And then Owe is an acquisition from the Ravens who we have some familiar with, certainly. And he's been a big asset to him since his acquisition. I think he's had 4 sacks or so in the last 4 games. On the offensive side, man, it certainly starts with Herbert for us. I feel like we caught a flyer a year ago. He was limited from a mobility perspective when we played him. I thought it impacted how the game unfolded. It allowed us to do some things schematically that you're somewhat hesitant to do if he has full mobility. I think it nailed him down in the pocket some and probably limited some of the things that they choose to do schematically, like play action pass and changes of the launch point, which is certainly a component of Greg Roman's attack. It was minimized some last year. And so as I watch tape this year, I'm cognizant of that. Herbert is extremely talented. He can kill you with his arms. He certainly can kill you with his legs. He can kill you with both by play extension. He has a complete arsenal of people to throw to. Can't say enough about their receiver core. The reacquisition of Keenan Allen is kind of a linchpin. Man, he's a steady Eddie. He's been around Herbert in the past. You can tell he's certainly a security blanket. You throw him in with the emergence of Johnson and McConkey, man, they're a dangerous group. And in recent weeks, I'd probably be wrong if I didn't mention the emergence of Gadsden, the rookie tight end from Syracuse, who's really put together some big-time games. His talent is showing. He's a guy that's capable of some run after. He's one of those unique body types. He's almost an oversized receiver, if you will. And so we certainly have our hands full in these one-dimensional passing moments, working to minimize all those eligibles while at the same time respecting the mobility component of Herbert. I've talked about all those things, and I certainly had mentioned the run game, and I better. When you're playing a Greg Roman offense, man, you better be prepared to stand up against the run. They've had some attrition in the backfield, but it hadn't slowed down their growth and progress in that area. They drafted the young runner from North Carolina in round 1. Certainly they acquired Naj in free agency. Both of those guys are not available to them, but there's still been an uptick in the run game, particularly in recent weeks, as Vidal has found his rhythm. I think he's got 200-yard games in the last 3 weeks. Patterson last week in particular is another young guy. I think he had about 50 yards rushing on 8 or 9 carries. And so,
Jared Patterson?
You know, there's no rest for the weary. We got a big game versus a really good team in their venue.
My former UB
one that's
Bull.
talented offensively and one that's talented defensively and in special teams. And so with that understanding, man, we're certainly preparing with an edge this week. And we got some things to sort through in terms of player availability. I expect that to clear up as we push through the week and us to be able to narrow our focus and position ourselves to be our best. I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Mike, did you go into the game against the Colts thinking that Duggar would play all but one snap, or did you just want to see how it was going to evolve?
I was hopeful that he could play a lot, but certainly we had direct eyes on him in case it wasn't unfolding in the ways that we would like. We're just getting to know him. We certainly respect the fact that he's a veteran player, and he certainly displayed signs that he was capable in our practice sessions leading up to Sunday. But stadiums are somewhat different, and so we had a plan, but we were certainly light on our feet if that wasn't moving in the right direction.
What did you see while he was playing that was either satisfying or comforting to you?
I didn't think there was any lack of fluidity in his movement, whether it was pre-snap adjustments or things that happened at the snap. And I think oftentimes that's an indicator of understanding. I certainly didn't expect him to be a hub of communication. Communication was probably going to be one-sided, but just in general, in terms of putting eyes on him, his fluidity of movement, adjusting the pre-snap shifts and motions, and the hair trigger that you saw at or just instantly after the snap gave me an indication that he was comfortable, he knew what he was looking at, and that he was going to be okay.
You talked about Jalen's versatility. What traits make him a good safety?
You know, it's just his relationship with the game. I think some of the things that you talk about when you first talk about the safety position are intangible qualities, are not necessarily things that you measure. He's got really good instincts. He's got really good passion for the game. He studies the game, and I think those are some things that really enable him to play back there, and that's such a major component of that position. His talents are obvious, you know, his tackling, his range, his physicality. But the more subtle things, the intangible things, I think are the things that are exciting for us because as he gains more experience back there, it's reasonable to expect some of those talents to show up more frequently.
A number of the defensive players talked about simplifying the defense last week going into the Colts game. How much of that was a byproduct of having new faces like Kyle Duggar, Jalen playing a new position, and how much of it was because you weren't getting the results you desired in the first part of the season?
I think it's both. I think it always is. I think all the decisions that you make in terms of menu and menu size are usually about yourself first and what you're going through, and then what's required to strategically match up against opponents.
Do you anticipate keeping it simple again this week?
New week, new issues. We'll see.
To that same vein, there definitely would seem to be a schematic change in terms of like too high versus not blitzing as much. Was that primarily of how you wanted to attack the Colts, or is that also a reaction to what you've been seeing recently?
Week in and week out, we make decisions based on the variables of that week, and so certainly the things that we did last week were relative to the Colts and our circumstance.
Did you do or not do anything to try to ease Duggar's transition into playing so much schematically for your defense?
You know, it's only so much you can do. He's deserving of a lot of credit, and that's why I mentioned him directly after the game. There's only so much you can do. He absorbed a lot of defense in a short period of time and displayed knowledge and understanding.
Would you like to, Mike, if possible, to add some help or depth at safety to allow Jalen to be more position flexible? Or are you happy with him being in the back there?
It really depends on player availability. It's certainly an asset of his. It's something that he's open to doing. It's something that he's capable of. But as I mentioned when I was talking about Derwin James, those things don't happen in a vacuum. They involve others and others' movement as well. And so we'll make those decisions based on what's available to us.
Mike, along those lines, you said last week you guys would be buyers at the trade deadline. You already bought one in Kyle Duggar. Do you anticipate shopping around a little bit more before 4 o'clock?
We'll see what happens. You know, I like shopping.
When Mike, along those lines, last year, around this time,
Spoiler,
you referred to the
Ben.
trade deadline as an arms race. How have you seen in recent years teams become more aggressive when it comes to in-season trades?
You know, I don't know that I look at it in terms of trends from that perspective. I just know that, you know, if you're trending in the right direction, if you got a desire to be in this thing as the road gets narrow, usually you're open to adding talent that can assist you, whether it's attrition based or whether it's just areas where you fall short. And that's something that I think some of the competitive teams are interested in and year out. It's just a natural component of this thing.
You announced, the team announced that you got Valdez-Scantling signed. You doing any more shopping at wide receiver, or has he addressed what you needed to address there?
You said 4 o'clock? So we got a few more hours. We'll see what happens.
What about him as a player? How does he help you? How might he be woven in?
He's just a practice squatter right now, and so we'll get him in the fold and get him working and check his overall level of conditioning, how he learns, and some of those things. It is not the Duggar discussion. He's just a practice squad guy.
How much did Aaron kind of advocate for bringing him in just with his familiarity?
He did not.
Mike, just to clarify, did you say Scotty and Cole are out this week or out to begin the week?
No, we'll see if they're able to participate, and then the quality of that participation will be our guide in terms of whether or not we include them.
When's the last time you had like an illness run through the locker room that kept these guys off for this period of time?
COVID, you know, is the only thing that kind of comes to mind. But, you know, it's the National Football League, man. That's why you better have a hardcore plan and be light on your feet. I'm certainly thankful that we acquired Kyle Duggar, man, and he's a quick study.
Mike, at the wide receiver position, how have you seen guys behind DK Metcalf like Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson continue to grow and develop, and how much more would you like to see them continue that process?
You know, I think it's been a steady improvement in terms of their quality of play, particularly Roman of late, other than that boneheaded lack of ball security late in the football game. Generally, there's been an uptick in the quality of his play. But again, we don't look at our eligibles as wide receivers, man. We feel really good about our tight end group as eligibles as well. And you can't talk about the passing game without talking about the contributions that we get from that group. We've been very open about that as well. When we acquired Jonnu at the very beginning of the journey, we talked about, you know, that we have eligibles regardless, REC, receivers. And I still think we feel the same way. We certainly need growth and development from individuals within our collective, like the two that you mentioned, but we're comfortable with how we're distributing the ball and our utilization of people and our division of labor to this point.
Going off of that, kind of on the defensive side, Peyton Wilson, obviously a big showing on Sunday. Just how have you seen him grow and develop this season?
You know, he's one of those second-year guys that gained a lot of in helmet experience last year. And so when you get that, it's reasonable to expect those guys to move forward and take off. Certain guys that don't get a lot of in-helmet experience, we have that same expectation. Roman, Troy Fatanu, for example. And so Peyton logged a bunch of snaps last year. You know, he's playing really good ball, but we expect him to. He expects himself to. He's got a really good relationship with the game. He's professional. He studies. We've asked him to stand in for Miles Killebrew as a special teams captain. And so, man, there's a lot of things trending in the right direction from a career standpoint for him, certainly.
Mike, you guys consistently took away the Colts' first read and made David Jones throw onto the ball. What did you see in the preparation that led to that being a more consistent factor for your defense compared to the other previous 2 games?
You know, his first option is to turn and hand that ball to Jonathan Taylor. And so that was the first order of business, and I think it all kind of went on from there, as I mentioned.
When you guys as a staff, you and the rest of your defensive coaches evaluate the creation of turnovers, are you looking at it from the standpoint of like a turnover is a turnover, like a win is a win, or do you look at it from the standpoint, like Cleveland, for instance, you're in a position to make a lot. They just didn't get them. The 2 games that you had against the division leaders in the AFC, you had 11. So do you kind of look at yourselves as we had a better turnover game strictly by the total, or is it more about the position you put your guys into?
You know, we're ball searchers. And so, you know, forget how many we get. We have to consistently display intent where appropriate. As we talked some last week, sometimes it's not appropriate when you're the first hitter, for example. But we routinely work on when it's appropriate. We have to be ball aware first. We got to be ball searcher second. And when you do those things, you generally get the results that you desire.
Mike Beanie Bishop was one of those ball searchers a year ago. You guys make the decision to move on from him with the practice squad. Just how did you kind of come to that?
You know, I'm not getting into practice squad decisions. That's just too far down the totem pole. I'm more interested in what we need to do this week and the guys that are on the 53 we're preparing to play.
Like, what does this defense have to do to build off of the momentum that you guys set last week against Indianapolis?
Simply come back to work. You know, as I mentioned post-game, man, it's a fine line in this business between success and failure in this week in and week out. The teams that are really good, the units that are really good, the individuals that are really good have a certain level of consistency to their performance. And so that certainly is a challenge for that unit that you asked about.
You know, Patrick Queen, and from the standpoint of his ability to communicate defense, what Terrell wants, getting the checks out, and how he's operated as you guys' kind of quarterback.
PQ's been awesome in year 2 as our defensive quarterback. He's really owned the responsibility of being a hub of communication. It's something that's somewhat new to him, although playing is not. Being that defensive quarterback is, and I like the trajectory of it in year 2.
Been very banged up at running back and on the offensive line, but they still average 4.8 yards a carry. Is that Greg Roman, or is there something else they have going on that makes them so good at running the football regardless of the personnel?
I think just there's a commitment from Roman and company. You know, we've competed against him a lot over the years. I think that's a signature of his football. I think it's going to be evident regardless of who plays running back and who plays in the offensive line. All you got to do is think about his time in Baltimore. There was always some emerging runner when faced with adversity, Gus Edwards and others that were running through people. And so I think the same remains.
Mike, Aaron told us after the game that Jalen talked to the team Saturday. What kind of impact do you think that had on the group, and what do you think about a guy that's been around 7 games willing to go up in front of the group?
You know, I asked him to, but he's not the only one. But generally, I'll keep those conversations between us. He's got a lot of experience. NFL experience, world championship experience, and I'm thankful that he was willing to share that with his teammates.
Talked a lot of training camp about you bringing a bunch of veterans together and trying to mold them together as a team. That 2-game losing streak was the first time that togetherness was really tested. How do you feel like they came through that ordeal?
I don't think that was the first time it was tested. It gets tested every day. It gets tested continually. I just think that's the nature of this journey that is a season. You know, I'm not overly concerned about that component of it. We've done our due diligence in terms of the men as individuals. Most of the people that we acquired, we coveted them when they came out in the draft. They've passed our smell test. They're good football men. And usually adversity brings the best out of good football men as opposed to the worst.
Mike, what do you guys have to do to be cleaner in the run game? Where you guys got it done short distance at the goal line. Jalen Warren was held at 2 yards per carry.
You know, sometimes you got to tip your cap to your opponent, and I think that's the first place to start. I thought, excuse me, I thought that Indy did an awesome job. I thought particularly that veteran front tandem of Buckner and Stewart are a problem. We knew that going in. We talked about that in here a week ago. They confirmed that. It minimized our start, to be quite honest with you. Thankfully, we were able to catch fire and move on from there. But I'd probably just like to compliment those guys. As I mentioned, when you got veteran guys that have been together like those two, coupled with a guy like Franklin, who's grown up in that system, and the safety tandem as well. Nick Cross, in his 4th year, drafted Kenny Moore, longtime Colt at the nickel spot. When you got people down the middle of that defense like that, with that level of not only individual experience but collective experience, there are going to be some challenges.
Anyone else? All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So, the Chargers have had quite a few injuries. They're kind of one of those teams that the injury bug has just been there. So Najee had like an eye thing early in the year. Finally, that got cleared up, and he ruptured his Achilles. It was literally like he went to go, and then just because his Achilles he went down. But you're mid play, so Justin Herbert like hopped over him, completed a pass, and then you have to worry about Najee, which that could have been very bad as far as injuries to other players if something goes wrong, especially Justin. Slater signed a new extension with the team, signed a new deal, became like the highest paid tackle or one of the highest paid tackles, and days later, maybe 10, 11 days later, I think, like tore his ACL, so he's out for the year. And then they moved Joe Alt from right tackle to left tackle because he was a left tackle in college at Notre Dame. And he had his high ankle sprain. I think it was a high. He had an ankle sprain. And now he just did it again, and now it needs surgery, so he's out for the year. So, traded for Trevor Penning today. Literally right buzzer beater for the trade deadline. Traded for Trevor Penning from the Saints. So, they're going to rely on him to hopefully fix their tackle woes, but I think he's a former first and he went for a 7th. So not exactly the biggest help. But who knows? Maybe a change of scenery would be good for him. Cole, whatever illness he has, hopefully he gets over it. Isaac with his pec, he re-injured that, so we'll have to see how he does. Let me think. Elliott was put on IR when Duggar was brought on. So it's going to take him minimum 4 weeks to recover from his hyperextended knee. Excuse me, so we already have one. But we'll see what happens there. Again, I didn't write notes because I got my little pup. So, no notes. Derwin, great player. Yeah, when he said Patterson, the running back, I'm thinking my former UB Bull, Jarrett Patterson. Because Hassan Haskins actually got put on IR too. So it's like Vidal and Patterson, I think, are the running backs. They're falling apart. But yeah, receivers, you got McConkey, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston. Who else? You've got some guys on defense. Obviously, Bosa is now in Buffalo. But I believe Khalil Mack's back. They got some players. Dante Jackson went from Pittsburgh to the Chargers, so we have to watch out for him. Or, who knows, maybe we exploit him. But typically, former Steelers tend to have good games versus us, so we'll see. But, this little one's falling asleep. I gotta let him out before he knocks out for the next couple hours. So, if you guys did enjoy this, please do leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn notifications on. I'll see all you guys in the next video. And Ollie says bye.